So guys, here we have it. This is Afonso de Albuquerque. Now, a Portuguese commander, engineering of course, versatility and support. Now, as we know, support is pretty good for engineering commanders. We do have Margaret and we also have John that have the support talent. And they are very effective as the primary commander. So I'm expecting to see this guy as a primary commander, unless obviously you did run in with someone like Margaret or John, which is very possible to be honest with you. Obviously, I've looked through the skills, and actually I've also watched Omniarch's video. I'm halfway through Chisgull's video, and not that I got bored, and not at all, because I was just busy doing other things and I haven't finished watching it yet. But I will continue watching Chisgull's video. So yeah, Portuguese commander, but I think people are getting mixed up. They're calling him Alfonso. It's Afonso. So don't mistake his name, guys. Let's just try and get it right. Let's not call him Alfonso. But yeah, Portuguese, which is really interesting. I believe the first Portuguese commander, and hey, is engineering, which is amazing for the Portuguese people, because and the best commanders you can get are engineering, of course. Really nice artwork behind. Actually, listen to the castle grounds and the mountains behind. Yeah, really sick artwork. Those mountains are actually beautiful. So let's go back onto the Portuguese thing. So, maybe engineering in the future could get the Portuguese civilization. Just saying, just putting it out there. Now let's go and take a look at these guys' skills. Now I'm very, very excited because on the first skill, now I don't know why the Facebook's in this order, to be honest with you. I'm just on Facebook looking at it now. Now the first skill is AOE, and we haven't had AOE. Well, we have had AOE since Gonzalo. I'm lying there. We've had a little bit of AOE on Stephen. Obviously, Stephen had a bit of AoE on his expertise, which was nothing much. Now, this isn't crazy either. It's nothing like Gonzalo, which does damage factor for 1200 when they're not in melee range. So yeah, it does 1200. Obviously, I'm talking about Cordoba, but Afonso does 800, and obviously each additional target will take 15% less. Now, I do believe this adds up. Well, someone said it adds up to like 1650 or 1850 damage, and they did say like obviously Baba does 1200, which it's not crazy difference, but it's still a decent amount of difference. Now he does do additional damage, which I'll show you in another skill soon. But if he's within melee range, then he's going to deal 1500 damage factor, which again not crazy. Your Gonzalo is doing 2,400, which is kind of miles behind, let's be honest with you. But for the next 2 seconds, and I believe that's the same for both these, it reduces their damage dealt by 10%. So a decent enough debuff. Now, I have heard people saying as well, because obviously in the Siege group, which is on Discord, now if you haven't joined the Siege group and you're keen on engineering commanders and Siege, Siege units, then feel free to join. The link for that should be in the description for the video, unless I missed it, but it should be there. Now, it reduces the damage dealt by 10% for 2 seconds. Now, you might think that's not crazy, but the more Afonsos you have on the field, the more damage reduction you're doing to all those enemy troops. So, could get this command on my farm. It's probably not a bad idea, and you're helping out all your allies by having this commander on the field, which is great. Now, I believe Gonzalo's active skill doesn't do any additional things but pure damage, so that will help your allies and stuff, and that's just a massive benefit in my opinion. And for the same within melee range, for the next 2 seconds, up to 5 nearby allied or friendly troops, including this commander's troop, takes 10% less damage. So now that is different. So if they're within melee range, so say you're getting swarmed, you're actually going to be benefiting more. So up to 5 nearby allied friendly troops, because it takes 10% less damage. Okay, that's a bit different. Yeah, so we're taking 10% less damage. Sorry, I was just muttering through that then, just trying to make sense of it. Probably should have done it before making the video, but there you go. So this one reduces their damage dealt, so that you're doing a debuff on the enemy. But when they're within melee range, you are basically buffing yourself and allied troops around you, which isn't bad. So, when you get swarmed, that's extra useful, I suppose. And hopefully, your mates stick around to help you out. Now, I'll be honest with you, that doesn't always happen. In fact, doesn't usually happen at all. So, let's go look at the second skill. So, Duke of Goa. I believe Goa is a place in Portugal, actually. Yeah, so that makes sense. Duke of Goa. This commander's siege units gain 20% march speed. Now, you should be using siege units. Now, it doesn't mean you have to. Obviously, I've explained this on multiple other videos that it's not a necessity to have siege units. You know, maybe you haven't got siege units in your army. You know, you might have to delete them for your kingdom. So you might have to use something else. And that is possible. So you would miss out on this skill, but you can still benefit. You know, 20% march speed, you know, nothing that important really. You know, if you're using cavalry troops in this under these commanders' army, but you will miss out on 25% health and 10% attack. Now these are quite high stats actually. Now I know Goa's Armada has 40% health, but he doesn't get the attack. And I believe now that the new tech has come out, basically the new crystal tech, I think an extra bit of attack is actually quite useful because you do get quite a bit of health anyway from new tech. So that attack is going to be quite useful, and it's 10% again, not crazy, but it's better than nothing. And 20% march speed is going to help you get in and out of battle quicker. Now, taking down towers, moving around, the longer you can stay in combat, guys, the more chance you're going to get of doing obviously more kills. So I think the march speed is much beneficial, to be fair. Now, whenever this commander's troop deals ranged skill damage, while in ranged mode, it takes 5% less damage for the next 10 seconds. This effect can obviously stack up to 4 times. So that's kind of big, actually, stacking up. So every time your troop is dealing ranged skill damage, so pairing with another ranged commander is then also going to benefit this. Now, ranged skill damage also is affected by ranged direct damage, and in fact, I did check this out when I was actually looking at John's skills. So it includes ranged direct damage and ranged additional damage. So that is pretty big. So you could stack that 4 times up pretty fast, you know, using your commanders that's also doing additional damage or direct damage. And there is quite a few siege commanders that do that, and we'll go and look at game very shortly and discuss that. And I'll show you where that's actually read in John's skill as well. So Hormuz Six, that's his 3rd skill. So let's go and check out the 4th. So this is the 4th skill, and obviously the expertise line of the sea is below it. So Mare, Clausum. Whenever this commander's troop launches a ranged basic attack, there is a 30% chance that... Right, let's just stop there. So if you're not into engineering, you don't know about it, a ranged basic attack is basically all the little attacks you do in between your active skills. So you do like 10 ranged basic attacks, and then your active skill will launch, generally. So obviously 30% chance that if it is not within melee range, and you don't really want to be within melee range of the target, it will deal an extra range direct damage factor 300, and reduces the target's march speed by 10% for 2 seconds. So another debuff there, which is great. We love to see that. Now, we have got other engineering commanders that also reduce march speed. So whether they stack up or not, though, I don't know. So let me know in the comment section. Do you know that if march speed debuffs stack up from other commanders, maybe? I'm not sure. But damage factor 300. Now, you may not think that's huge, but, you know, that takes the total damage up, you know, quite high. Is there a cooldown? This, yeah, 5-second cooldown. So every 5 seconds this could launch. Now, obviously, doing the direct damage factor, that will also give you an extra 5% stack on the damage reduction, because obviously from the last skill, from the 3rd skill. So again, you've already got something there, which is very decent indeed. Now, if they are within melee range of the target, so if your troop firing upon them then gets into melee range, you know, they come and attack you basically, it deals extra range direct damage factor 500. So it is a little bit of an increase. So then you are going to be doing a total of, was it 1500 plus the 500, so 2000 damage factor in total. But then you've only got a certain percentage of chance for that to happen. So, you know, nothing crazy, but these instant procs can be really useful. And I presume, you know, with 30% chance, it is going to occur quite often, every 5 or 6 seconds, I'd say, and increase the target's damage received by 5% for 2 seconds as well. So 5% received, you know, damage received isn't crazy. Again, I'd like to see more than that, to be honest with you. But Line of the Sea actually improves this skill, so it enhances Mare Clausum. Whenever this commander's troop launches a ranged basic attack, it is now 50% chance that. So instead of 30%, 50%. So that's going to happen like all the time. The cooldown is still the same though. And if it is not within, if it's not within melee range, it's damage factor 400. So only an extra 100, but there is a lot more chance of that happening. And reduce the target march speed by 15%. So instead of 10%, it's now 15%, which is, you know, a 50% extra bonus, which isn't bad at all, I guess. And if they're within melee range, an extra 200 damage factor there. And you got 10% damage received for 2 seconds instead of the 5%. So a little bit better. And again, I mean, these are going to help other allied troops as well. So every time you're hitting a target, when this triggers off in the basic attacks, they're going to be taking 5% more damage. Again, the more Afonsos on the field, the more your allies are going to benefit. So there's no reason why you can't make this march on your farms, guys. Now, I've got Garja Cordoba on my farm, but the debuffs aren't crazy. Garja does have, I think it's 20% defense debuff, which is all right. But increasing the target's damage received, or, you know, the march speed things, you know, they're very useful indeed. That probably would have more effect than 20% defense debuff. So yeah, let's go and have a jump in game and discuss like some of the commander pairings that could work. Now again, he is a skill damage commander. AOE, so he's definitely up there with one of the best now. Now he's not going to be better than what we've seen before in terms of Gonzalo. Is he better than Garja Mare though? We have to wait till some tests, I think, to actually find that one out. So yeah, let's hop in game. So here we are with John. Obviously, John, one of the most recent ranged commanders. Now, this is the range skill damage. So obviously, it was one of the options which you click on for Afonso, but obviously you couldn't because it was on Facebook on one of the pictures. And as we said, includes range direct damage and range additional damage. So every time these commanders deal, you know, damage factor 400, that's additional damage, and that is then going to increase the stacking of that debuff that Afonso does. Was it a debuff or a buff? I can't remember, but that is going to increase that. So actually, John could be a fairly decent pairing for Afonso because obviously he does have the additional damage factor, which is great, but also he does allow a 20% more range skill damage for the next 3 seconds. So you'd probably run John as primary, and then you'll be dealing 20% more on that AOE skill damage from Afonso. Now the only problem is John doesn't have any healing, and as we know from the past, when they introduce new end, they usually introduce 2 at a time, which totally makes sense because every cycle of commanders, you generally get 2 commanders of that troop type. So you'd expect that with engineering as well. There's no reason why not to. Now I know we did have 2 KVK2 range commanders released, but they are for KVK2. Now I'm not saying they're bad because I do think they look pretty decent. And yeah, so Archimedes and Mare, and I believe that they can perform pretty well. Now I've seen their performances of 5-5-1-1 from another Siege player, Turbo, and they were doing okay, but nothing crazy. And I do think that Afonso at 5-5-1-1 would do pretty well. But like I say, I'm expecting another range commander to be announced within the next couple of days. I don't see any reason why not to have some healing on. But if you don't invest in both, you might want to actually run them with another commander that has healing. Now, obviously that keeps them in the field longer. If you want to run them with an epic commander, you could run with Narcissus, who has a defense tree. So if you look in the defense talent tree, we do have medicinal supplies. So whenever this commander's troop uses active skill, it recovers a portion of its slightly wounded unit's healing factor 300. And obviously that is going to happen twice with active skills. Now he hasn't just got the defense tree, he has got some healing as well, which is Conqueror of the Sunset. It recovers a portion of its slightly wounded units, healing factor 400. If you're going for cheap in March, you'd probably want to run in with Narcissus. Now, whether you go for Narcissus primary and then use the talent tree from the defense tree, extra bit of healing, you could do. But you might find that support tree actually works better in terms of dealing damage. And obviously, we looked at support tree before. We got Margaret, we get better levels of rage with rejuvenate, and we do have some extra healing received in here as well, 9% extra healing. But also units, if you're using siege units, they're going to gain 6% attack, 6% defense, and 6% health. So that's 18% stats as well. Now I would run here with Afonso, if you're using Afonso as obviously a primary commander. Again, I don't know what's going to come out next, if we get a commander at all next, announced in the next couple of days, which is what usually happens. So in the last cycle, we had, I think it was John, maybe it was Stephen announced first. One of them was announced first, and then a couple of days later, we had another announcement. So I'm expecting the same again, but don't hold me on that because we just don't know. I don't know. I've got no insider knowledge, but I would think so. But if we don't get someone else, you might want to run with Stephen. So let's look at Stephen's skills. Now, obviously, he's another skill damage commander. Now, Gonzalo, who is the best range commander, guys. So just hold off there. But if you're going to pair him with a skill damage commander, which sort of makes sense, there is that. So Afonso will have chemistry with another skill damage, obviously commander, because they're doing the same thing. They're going to buff each other, as you'll see in Stephen's skills. He does actually buff skill damage as well. I think it's Stephen. Oh, yeah, that could have. But obviously, he's a skill damage commander. Primary, because to be honest with you, from the testing I've done, the skill tree doesn't seem to be that great. Now, option would be Margaret, because also Margaret's expertise does some healing. Now, not crazy healing, but healing factor 500. Now, it's not mighty heal either, and you do have to expertise it to get that as well. But it does have skill damage synergy. Again, she's a skill damage commander. Obviously, see if we can, but it's not bad. Bonus, skill damage bonus. So she does do a skill damage bonus. So this commander's troop deals 20% more skill damage when their troop deals range skill damage, has a 30% chance to reduce all targets' march speed by 3 seconds. So she's actually dealing 20% more range skill damage constantly. So that, yeah, the troop is going to be doing 20% more range skill damage constantly without being primary or secondary. So it will be interesting to see which one would be better primary. I don't think there'll be much difference with Margaret and Afonso. I mean, they both have the support tree. But to be honest, I think the best pairing, if you're only going to have one siege march, is likely to be Consolidate Cordoba because of his crazy AOE. You know, you're going to be hitting 3 enemy troops by both commanders. It's just going to be a crazy amount of damage. Now, I know they've got synergy in terms of damage, but I think pairing the best 2 commanders will be the best bet. Again, I will do testing with, just like before, obviously I do my ranged spreadsheet, which is obviously on the Discord server too, and if you're struggling, ask someone in the chat, they'll guide you to that, obviously to where that is. And I've tested every single pairing so far, apart from obviously Mare Archimedes, because I didn't want to max them, because I thought we'd be getting 2 new SOC commanders, Season of Conquest commanders, out very soon, which seems to be the case. At least we've got 1 for now. Now he does do smite damage to the attacker damage factor, so that actually might not benefit, because it is smite this range smite damage, so that won't improve the 5% stacks on Afonso. But everything else is fine, like normal damage, iron counter damage reduction is fine. There's no reason why he wouldn't work okay with Afonso. And if you were going to have one best siege pairing, you could go for Cordoba Afonso. But let's not count out Mare, guys. He does have the heal, and he does have the smite synergy with Cordoba, and he's an amazing commander, guys. So obviously at the moment, Cordoba is the best siege pairing, and that's probably going to be the case unless we have another second crazy commander that comes out in the next couple of days, or announced in the next couple of days, which I just don't know if they're going to make him crazy enough to match Cordoba Mare or Mare Cordoba, whichever way around you want to run them. He's just so good. I just don't, to be honest with you. Now, it is better, I believe Afonso is better than John. John is a bit squishy. He's got attack. His rage gain speed is pretty good. but defensive and health-wise, not amazing. Although I've not tried running these commanders, so I know we're getting better health with the new tech, and we're getting so that could make a big difference. And I've never had a decent amount of unit capacity on my marches, so we'll see how that goes, guys. Obviously, war should be starting fairly soon. We entered KVK last night in terms of Lost Kingdom. I actually need to get in the Lost Kingdom. I was just transferring the last of my resources. I've still got some more to transfer, actually, so I'll be doing that now. But overall, I think he's a great commander, Afonso, and that AoE is great. We'd want to see AoE. We need. But let's see what happens in the next couple of days. Again, I'm expecting another announcement. But so guys, let me commander. I'd say I think better than better than John and Stephen, and we do need an improvement, but not the crazy commander that we needed. Like, it could have been a lot better. Let's face it. We needed another Arlo, and Smite as well. So let's talk about the formation armaments. So as we know, V formation is really set towards normal damage bonuses. So obviously the legendary inscriptions and the rare inscriptions are all set for like normal damage bonuses, which what you want to see with smite damage commanders. Now, to benefit from skill damage commanders, you're gonna have to go for some of the white skills inscriptions. Sorry, so like Furious, which gives an 8% bonus to all types of skill damage dealt and a 3% bonus to all kinds of damage dealt for 3 seconds. So that is going to benefit, obviously, Afonso more than 5% normal damage. So that's why Smite's so important, I think, or so much better for V formation, unless they bring out another formation, of course. So Uplifting does normal damage, Drilled does normal damage. That's that's better damage for a Smite commander. So we might have to skill damage inscriptions, like legendary skill damage inscriptions and rare ones, because at the moment the V formation inscriptions commanders massively, which is obviously what we want to see. We want to see big improvements with getting legendary inscriptions, don't we? So that's interesting. Now, we might find that Plume. So I do have the Plume in here. Now, obviously, used with that in the past because it's 50% chance to increase the damage by 30%, can trigger once every 5 seconds. Now, this can basically trigger on every single little bit of damage that these commanders do. So obviously every time you deal direct damage factor, and that includes these direct damage factor, it will trigger on those. Now, John's probably the best up to now, but we might find that Afonso, I actually work him at the moment because he's got a higher AoE damage factor, and also when you expertise him, he's also got like 400, so it's similar. But on Afonso with a Plume could be pretty good. But again, we'll have to just wait and see. I'll have to do some testing, guys. So guys, hope you enjoyed the video. This is Mr. Siege, and I'll speak to you more soon. Obviously, lost of another engineer commander the next couple of days, and bye bye.